Welcome to another episode of Inspired Voices. My name is Oliver Riera, and this is Adam Grossman. How you doing, man?
Doing well, man. It's good to be here.
Absolutely. Why don't you tell everyone what you do?
Hey, everybody. I'm Adam Grossman. I'm a real estate agent, entrepreneur, and investor.
Hey, I look at your social media and stuff like that, and I was like, oh, man.
Yeah.
You don't see a lot of real estate agents do what you do, like, with the videos and all that.
It's a little bit different. I started doing the videos probably about 7 or 8 years ago before they became so mainstream, and I just kind of enjoyed it. To me, it brings in some business and kind of gets you out there and gets you recognition, but I just enjoy the creativity of it as well. I've always kind of been a class clown when I was a kid, so it's fun to mix the comedy with the real estate and just have fun, because it can be a stressful process getting people in homes, helping people sell homes for as much as possible. And obviously, especially after COVID, there's a very high expectation when people go to sell their homes. So it's nice to kind of mix in some comedy and make it a little bit lighter. It's already a stressful enough process. So making fun of it, I think, makes it a little bit more enjoyable.
I definitely agree. Is it useful to have those videos?
There's different views on the video content, the digital content in my industry, and whether or not that really translates into business. I think that the more people see you, it translates into business. So that's just one factor of how I build my business. Ultimately, the most important thing is the referral game, right? Doing a really good job for people and knowing what you're talking about and having a track record of doing a good job. And with that being said, you add on to that. So a lot of people will put their face on the grocery cart in the grocery store. They'll do videos. Some will do billboards. Some will do, digital marketing. And all of it together, I feel, is what builds your business. People need to see you repeatedly. And oftentimes it's the third or fourth time that they see you that they call you. So that's just one more iron in the fire. And you got to kind of stick to your strengths. I mean, some agents, a majority, have no business being in front of the camera. One, they're just not good at it. They're just not natural. And if it's not natural, then to me, it actually hurts you more than it helps you. So
You start to become like a robot.
Right. And it makes you look bad as opposed to just being neutral. So you at least want to be neutral, but if it can do some good, then that's, icing on the cake. So I think it really just depends on the agent and what their strengths are. I've always enjoyed speaking and acting and the creativity behind that. So for me, the videos and the content, I feel add to my business. And if nothing less, they're fun.
Yeah, I like the way you put that because I try to tell, I have some clients as well as for video production and stuff like that. And I tell them the importance of video. It's like they're connecting all those sensories into it. Like you're seeing you, they're hearing you, they're watching your behaviors and all that stuff. And those things, that is what people really remember from you.
Right. And you got to be genuine. So a lot of times people may actually be good in front of the camera, but they're not being themselves. And people can see through that. You have to be comfortable with who you are. And oftentimes a lot of people in sales in particular are a little bit insecure. And I think that kind of shines through. So you just have to be who you are and be genuine and enjoy the process.
Yeah, I like that, man. So let's start from the top, man. Where are you from?
So I am from Durham, North Carolina. I was born in Louisville, Kentucky. We moved here when I was 3. My father did his residency at UNC Chapel Hill. He was an anesthesiologist, and that is what actually brought us to North Carolina. It was between here and Columbia, South Carolina, and I'm so glad that my mother chose North Carolina because I enjoyed growing up in Durham. It is a much different city now than it was in the mid to late 80s when I was growing up there, in the 90s, of course, but it was a great childhood. I was over there by South Square in that district, which is starting to develop quite a bit now.
Oh, nice.
And downtown, I remember going there, and it was a place you definitely didn't want to be at night. So what they've done with the new ballpark and that whole venue there, and the restaurant scene obviously is fantastic in Durham, and the breweries and stuff like that is great. But growing up, we didn't have that. We went to Chapel Hill most of the time, and went to Franklin Street. Played basketball at Woolen Gym and Fetzer Gym, and played a lot at the Lakewood YMCA growing up. I was big into basketball, so that was pretty much where we were there in Bojangles.
So would you say that you were like an outgoing kind of person?
Yeah, I've always.
You said you were a class clown. Right?
Yeah. So I'm one of those guys that I always get caught. So I knew I could never be a criminal. So if I was cut up in class or making a joke, man, I was standing in the hall right away. So I was just one of those people that kind of always stood out a little bit because I'm loud, I guess, and obnoxious maybe a little bit. But so now I think that actually translates well into sales because people will hire who's memorable.
Yeah.
They don't actually hire who they like half the time. They just hire who they remember.
Yeah.
Because people by nature don't want to do the work to do the research. So they're like, oh, I remember that person. I've seen that goofy ass like 3 or 4 times. So I'll hire him or her. So I think it translates well into sales.
Yeah, I think so too.
Right.
So did that get you in trouble though? Like when you're growing up with the loudmouth?
I never got into major trouble. I was always a good kid. You're right. I like to cut up and have a good time, but I was never, doing anything that was illegal. I wasn't doing anything to hurt anyone. I had the best of intentions. I just always liked to have a good time.
Yeah.
And, playing high school basketball and AAU basketball and traveling with those guys. I mean, we were always having fun and cutting up, but we were a clean cut group of guys. We just like to have a good time.
Yeah. So you played sports throughout.
I did. Yeah. Basketball was my thing. And it was a year-round sport for us. I mean, we played AAU ball. We were always doing stuff in the fall. We had, fall ball.
I'm not too familiar with basketball. Is that high school or college?
So I played high school. I got some offers, but it was like small Division II and Division III stuff. So it was going to be a whole lot of work and not that much fun. And at a certain point, I wanted to enjoy the college experience. So I'm glad that I did it the way that I did it. Yeah. But I do miss those days. I mean, being in that team environment was fun. And I feel like it gave me a lot of tools that I now use in the business world as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think sports do that in general, right?
Self-discipline, teamwork, a lot of those good, being on a schedule, on a regimen, all of that translates well into your career.
Yeah. Even just like, the mind connecting with the body is a huge thing because you can listen to yourself and adjust.
Right. Yeah, right. And I find that a lot of people in real estate and in any career, they're not very self-aware. Like they don't know themselves very well. Right. Their strengths and their weaknesses. And a lot of times that can be a major disadvantage when you don't know yourself. You have to know what it is that makes you who you are and what your goals are and what you're great at. And then focus on those things. I mean, we're always trying to improve our weaknesses as well, but you have to know what your strengths are. And I find that a lot of people, I think they haven't experimented enough in their life with themselves.
Yeah.
They were so busy doing things for other people and trying to please other people and living this
parents, especially, right? Growing up as kids.
Right. And friends and trying to impress other people and do what they find life has told them they need to do instead of living their own life and kind of discovering who they are. You really don't get self-mastery until you kind of blaze your own path.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
I always tell people, like, I don't know what to do in my life. Like when I taught acting for kids and stuff like that.
Right.
They're going into college. They're like, why are you going to college? I was like, oh, it's because my parents want me to. I was like, oh, so your parents live your life for you?
Right.
And they were like, they didn't know how to take that.
Right. And we see that translate into adulthood as well, where people oftentimes will do the things that they see their friends doing as opposed to going in the direction that they feel compelled to go into.
Yeah.
And they get caught in situations that they may not prefer to be in because of that. And it's tough because you got to come out of it. And that's a lot of work. And you grow through that process and we're all learning, right? I don't even want to call them mistakes, but we all put ourselves in challenging situations that we have to come out of. And you develop character coming out of that. So it's never necessarily bad. It just is what it is.
Yeah.
And it's building who you ultimately will become. Yeah. So you just one step at a time, you kind of find your way there.
Absolutely. Yeah. I told them, like, the way you want to find your passions and stuff like that is just to try new
do
things.
Stuff.
Yeah.
Just do stuff.
Just do things that make you happy. And through that, you'll find something.
Right. Trial and error. It really is.
So, you see, you went to basketball. Were you kind of, when you were playing basketball, were you kind of crushed that you couldn't continue on into college, or is that kind of a thing?
Well, my biggest thing growing up and why I even got on the team, I was always the hardest worker. So I was always a guy, that went to all the open sessions when a lot of other players wouldn't. In the morning, I worked out all the time, lifting weights, running. I would go to the YMCA after practice a lot of times. There were other coaches that would see me in there, and they would tell my coach that, hey, I saw Adam at the YMCA last night at 7:30. He was like, man, we had practice. He's still working. Like, that was why I had a spot on that team. And I could have played college with that same type of mentality, but I recognized something, and I'm glad I had the experience that I did. I recognized something at that time. A lot of my teammates, they didn't work as hard as I did, but they were just naturally more gifted than I was at basketball. And I think that was a very important lesson. I had that same experience in sales. I recognized very early that I have a talent that a lot of people just don't have. Right. And I want to hone that craft and make it as good as I possibly can and be the best version of myself. But I recognize that, talent does matter, and you need to kind of figure out what you're good at and translate and work into growing that as much as you can.
Yeah.
And basketball really taught me that.
Yeah, it's like play to your strengths, and then
Right.
those strengths become skills when you put practice into it,
Right.
and stuff like that.
Right. Through practice and just experience and being in, challenging situations, they'll grow you into a better version of yourself.
Did you have that consciously? Like, were you aware of all that when you were playing basketball?
I was always kind of an old soul,
Yeah.
but I did. I mean, I just remember being on the team and seeing some of my teammates eating 3 square meals of Burger King every day and not practicing as hard as I was.
Right.
And then they're starting over me. So I was like, there's something to this. I mean, these guys, granted, they've been playing for a long time, and I'm not taking anything away from them, but I just recognize the fact that, hey, this is coming a little bit easier to them. They're a little bit more naturally gifted at this than I am. And it wasn't just physically, because physically I could run really fast, and I was actually a really good leaper. I could dunk off vertical, and I had a lot of the skills to be able to play it. But mentally, I just think that I would talk myself out a lot of it, and I didn't have it together mentally the way that they did. They were just more confident for whatever reason at that. And, you look at the greatest athletes in the world, the LeBron Jameses and stuff like that, the way they see the floor in the game is completely different than everybody else. And in their mind, it's like in slow motion. It's just a little bit easier. And I didn't have that experience. So I knew that I needed to find that in some other field, and in sales and business, I was able to find that. Very fortunate, very blessed in that regard.
You're definitely aware of and enlightened at a young age, it seems like.
Right. And again, I had to be in those situations where, I wasn't very good and fail or make mistakes to find myself and to figure out
Were you
who
okay
I
with
am.
that?
At the time, it bothered me, but looking back on it, I'm glad it happened as early as it did, because I find that a lot of other people have that experience, but they're much older. Not that that's a bad thing, right? Because this isn't a race. We're all running our own race, right? We're not racing amongst each other. But, to me, I was very fortunate to discover that at a young age, yes.
Yeah.
Because I went into college already being aware of that and looking for my why and, what my next challenge was going to be and to set goals. And having that experience younger like that, I think was very good.
Yeah. That kind of mentality kind of really just takes you far, man.
Right.
And it seems like it did well too.
I appreciate it. Yeah, thirst for knowledge. I've always been curious, and I find that most people that are successful at what they do, they're curious. They want to become better at it. They question things. They want to learn. They want to grow. They're always looking for opportunities to get out of their comfort zone. And to grow. And to me, that is what being successful is all about.
Yeah. Damn. Yeah. I like that, man. You got a good head on your shoulders.
I try. Most of the time. We have our moments.
Right.
We have our moments. So,
so you went into sales in college, right? Well, learning about sales and business and all that.
So I went to UNC Pembroke for undergrad. Okay. I kind of goofed around a little bit in high school in terms of showing up to class. But again, I was always a good kid. So I would leave and go work. That was my big thing. So, I worked at Millennium Health and Fitness. I had a friend that owned a window washing company, gutter cleaning, that sort of thing. And I would leave. I'd say, hey, where are you at? And I would go meet him and we would work. So I was always doing something constructive. I wasn't out like beating the streets, getting in trouble with drugs or anything like that. But I just found that a lot of the time in high school, I felt was kind of a waste. Like we were watching videos and doing silly stuff in the class.
Yeah.
And I just didn't see how it was applicable to my life. I'm much different now. I actually read over 2 hours a day now. I'm the biggest nerd you've ever met. But I just felt at that time, my ambition and my growth was through entrepreneurship and making money. I was already had a desire to get ahead financially, even at that age. Now, unfortunately, I was blowing it on every pair of Michael Jordan shoes that came out.
Right.
But, so I didn't have much to show for it at the end of the day. But that was an important lesson too, that when you make a dollar, you need to hang on to it. And I think that spending at that age was good because it got it out of my system at an age where it really didn't matter. I wasn't going to invest in the stock market and in real estate when I was 16 or 17 years old.
Right.
So I think having that experience then as opposed to 26 was to my benefit as well. So I would leave and go work. And because of that, I think I missed like 32 days of first period. It was animal science. Again, something I was probably never going to use.
Yeah, exactly.
I think agriculture is like 2 or 3% of GDP now. So there probably wasn't a place for me, especially with my mouth. I was going into sales. So, because of that, UNC Pembroke welcomed me with open arms, and I'll always owe them for that. But I didn't get to go to UNC Charlotte like I wanted to with some of my friends. But I went there for graduate school. So I went to UNCP, discovered that I actually really enjoy learning once it's for something that I find is going to be useful, which was business
something
for me.
Practical, right?
Right. Yeah. So I loved math, English, any of the writing stuff, because I love to speak and write and stuff like that. So I enjoyed those courses. It was some of the, the science and the social studies that maybe I didn't like as much, which ironically now I love history and I love the medical world. I read all about healthcare all the time. But so I kind of found myself as a student and ended up doing exceedingly well at UNCP and got really close with some of my professors. I still have a relationship with some of my professors from UNC Pembroke. We just still speak on the phone. And then I ended up getting accepted to UNC Charlotte, ironically, and I went there for my MBA. So I just went straight through, got the MBA. Which interestingly enough, I never really had a desire to work in corporate America. So, without going to corporate America, it really didn't make sense for me to get an MBA, but it was just a goal. It was something on my bucket list that I wanted to do. I wanted to be highly educated.
I'm surprised when you said that, because like you said, high school was kind of like, it's nothing practical there and stuff like that. So
I discovered that I like to learn, man. And I discovered that I enjoyed being a student. And, I enjoyed going to the class and the professors and writing the papers and just the whole process of that, setting a goal that I want to get, this degree. Was important to me. It was similar to, hey, I want to make this basketball team, or before that, I did martial arts. Hey, I want to get this belt, so I need to, learn the katas and learn how to, break 3 bricks or whatever it was. You set a goal, you train for it, you get it, and that's kind of always been my mentality. And that translates well into school. It's the same sort of thing, and then that translated well into sales. So it's more along the lines of, delayed gratification and having the ability to say, hey, this is my goal. I'm going to do whatever it takes. I'll eat the way I need to eat, work out the way I need to work out, study the way I need to study, whatever it is to get to that place. And if you dial in like that and you go all in, typically you're going to get what you want. It might not happen in the time frame that you want, but typically you're going to find your way there.
And you were still aware of that in college even?
At that point, I was aware of it. I kind of recognized this sense of real accomplishment when I set a goal and then achieved it. And I loved that dopamine high that I got from achieving something. And I just recognized that, hey, there's some type of correlation between that and the way that I feel and feeling good about myself. And to me, that was true joy. Whereas other stuff was just pleasure. There's a difference where I could go to McDonald's right now and feel good for 20 minutes and then I'm going to hate life after that, where it's immediate pleasure as opposed to setting a goal and going through the process and getting something that ultimately makes me feel really joyful.
Yeah, I think the dopamine hit, is kind of what gets people a lot,
Being aware of what that is and how that works.
Yeah. How do you overcome that kind of thing too?
Right. You got to have a strategy. You got to be aware of it. You got to know how it works, and you got to have a plan in place to do it. Because I still struggle. I still struggle with sugar, man.
I feel like
I read sugar it gets me every time. But I think focusing on what you want really is the answer. If you focus hard enough on what you really want, as opposed to how good that pleasure makes you feel, and you associate enough pleasure with what you really want, it's a little bit easier to overcome those temptations.
And I think to put that into more context, like or go deeper, is finding that pleasure of what you want with your goals, but also letting yourself feel that to the core, where it changes your vibration, changes your energy.
Right, exactly. And I think just being familiar with you and what really resonates with you, because different things make different people happy, right? So you got to know what it is that really makes you feel good and does it for you. For some people, it's their kids. For some people, it's their career. For some people, it's fitness. It could be a multitude of, it might be a hobby. It could be a multitude of different things. You just need to figure out what it is for you. And there is no one answer for that. That's why, comparison is always a silly thing. Looking at what someone else is doing is silly, because we don't realize, I fall into this. I've watched other professionals in my industry, okay? And from afar, seen them on social media, the BS that it can be 99% of the time, right? And watch what they've done and who they are on film. And then you get around that person and they're completely different than what you expected. You love the image of what they portray and you love the results of what they get in their career. But then when you see what goes into that and the person that they are to have that, you don't want any part of it. So you have to be very careful watching other people and extremely careful comparing yourself, because at the end of the day, you don't know what they're sacrificing to get that. And oftentimes it's something you want no part of. And I've learned that. I've learned that the hard way. But again, that was a valuable lesson for me.
Yeah. Do you find yourself, well, I'm guessing from everything you said, you have a lot of patience? Would you say that?
I'm more patient than I used to be, but I certainly wouldn't say that I have a lot of patience. My uncle would always say that he had one patience, so I probably have more than one patience. But it is difficult sometimes when you're a go-getter entrepreneurial type of mindset to be patient.
That's true.
You want immediate results. You want to get things done. You get to the bottom of shit, and waiting is oftentimes not part of your draconian ways. So it's always something that I struggle with, but I've gotten better at slowing down. I find that at 42. I'm a lot better moving at a methodical, slower pace than I was at maybe 28 when I was just hair on fire, balls to the wall. Let's buy every rental property in sight and sell every house we can. Now I'm a lot more methodical and strategic about how I do things. And I really think about things, and I journal now and do things that I didn't do before. And I understand why I'm doing things before I get started, as opposed to just getting started and not really thinking it through.
Right.
I don't think that was a bad strategy in my 20s, and maybe even my early 30s. I probably went too long that way. But, at a certain point, you really need to stop and slow down and figure out, why am I doing this? What do I want? Sharpen your axe as opposed to keep wailing away on the tree with an axe that's dull.
Yeah.
And this is a major, major shortcoming that I see in some of my colleagues, the inability to slow down. They're really good at moving fast. They have that nervous energy. They call it ADHD or whatever you want to call it, which is all well and good.
Right.
But you have to learn how to taper that down and control that, because if you can't be any speed but hyperactive, at a certain point, that speed will no longer serve you. No. You have to figure out how to mix it up. It's no different than when I played basketball. If you watch the greatest basketball players in the world, they don't just sprint. Like if you watch Steph Curry, like he's moving fast, then he's moving slow, then he's moving at a medium speed. He changes his speed. You never know what to anticipate.
Right.
Running backs, you see that as well. They're constantly changing their speed on a dime. You have to know how to slow down in order to speed up. So I find that a lot of successful people, they can go really fast, but they don't know how to slow down. They don't think things through. They don't know why they're doing what they're doing. And it gets them into a lot of trouble oftentimes. They get carried away. And what you'll find, especially as we get older, extreme is not good. And I would have said something different a decade ago. I would have said nothing in moderation. Let's go. Let's kill ourselves. But then you have injuries in the gym. You start to have burnout in your career. You start to have terrible work-life balance, and you lose important relationships. And most importantly, you're just not really happy. And when you experience those pains, you realize that, hey, this is something I need to work on. I need to learn how to move at a slower speed. And I think that's why meditation is so in. And meditation's a real thing. It works. But there's different ways to do that. You could do it on a cardio machine, just closing your eyes and kind of centering yourself.
There's so many different forms of meditation, man.
Right.
Now, what's your form of meditation?
But it's all about slowing down. So I do a whole lot of morning cardio. I walk in the morning outside a lot of times, taking deep breaths. I find that's very cathartic. But I also just go to Planet Fitness, right up the street in Briar Creek, and I'm on the Stairmaster 25 to 30 minutes. Just close my eyes, kind of get in the zone. I'm thinking about my goals. I'm practicing gratitude. I'm constantly trying to focus on what I'm grateful for. Listen, there's always going to be a lot of people that have it worse. Clearly, as a go-getter, we want more. We're always goal-centric. We want this, we want that. But there's something to being grateful for what you've already achieved and what you already have, as opposed to just wanting more.
Yeah, that's true.
More is not always the answer, man.
No,
it's not. And I've learned that. I've learned that.
Sometimes you just got to stop,
right?
Reevaluate some things, tweak some things, and then move forward.
Because the way that you've been in the past doesn't necessarily still serve you. You see this all the time. Like celebrities can get away with things until they can't. And you see that with Michael Jackson. You saw that with Prince. You saw that with Elvis Presley. You saw that with Whitney Houston. And the list just goes on and on and on.
If you want to grow, you have to, that's going to happen.
And just imagine if those same celebrities, and a lot of people who aren't celebrities, right, that have this issue, which is a lot of people, a whole lot of people, if they just would have slowed down, worked on themselves as opposed to just working on their career or their goal. If they would have just worked on themselves and grown themselves spiritually and another way, and physically and mentally and emotionally, if they would have done those things, they'd still be alive. They would have lived another 40 or 50 years, produced more great work, made more money, helped more people. They would have done all of that had they just slowed down and worked on themselves. But people oftentimes in their careers, they're so busy trying to fill a hole that they don't stop to do that because and these people, you can feel it when you're around these people. Their energy will let you know.
Oh, yeah.
You can. It is crazy how powerful that is. It's amazing. When someone's trying to fill a hole, and when someone is passionate, truly passionate about what they're doing, and they're doing it for the right reasons.
Yeah.
You know that. You know when you meet them. There's no question.
The more aware you are of yourself, the more genuine it's going to come out.
Correct.
Right? You
Yeah,
know? And
absolutely.
You're not putting on a show, and you're not being aware that you're putting on a show.
Right, because in the beginning, we're all faking it till we make it, right? I mean, everybody's trying to portray this aura of success. We're just trying to, grow a business, create a business, grow a business. And, with that, there's unfortunately a little bit of fakery in the beginning, but at a certain point, the whole point is to grow into the life that you really ultimately want. Because why are you doing it? You're not working that hard and making the money as your end. That's the means to your end, which is the great life that you want, your vision. And your vision wasn't to work your ass off so you can be unhappy. And unfortunately, I know a whole lot of people that work their asses off, make a ton of money, and they're still miserable.
Yeah.
And it's because they thought that was going to be their end when it wasn't. That was just their means to get to the end, and they get there and they're not happy. And you see this all the time, even in Hollywood, where man, that celebrity wasn't happy after all that he achieved. It's like, and that's why.
Yeah, you see it all the time, right?
Right. They're filling a hole.
So you got through basketball, right? And then what was the next step after that?
So we went to UNCP, then we went to UNC Charlotte, and then we got into real estate after that. I had always wanted to get into real estate because my mother and I, and she was a single parent. My father's a great guy, but my mom raised me. So, we lived in apartment in Durham, okay? And Colonial Apartments, anybody that's from Durham has lived in Colonial at least once. It's a famous story. And we were there till I was 12. And then we finally had saved up enough money and gotten a little bit from my grandmother as well, who passed away around that time. And we bought our first home. And it was a life-changing experience for me. We moved about 2 miles away from the apartment, so it was still relatively close. But just having a home with a driveway where I could have a basketball court in my driveway and play with the friends in the neighborhood was just an amazing experience.
Yeah, game changer.
Right, it was. And it just kind of opened my eyes to how powerful that is. And I wanted to share that with others. I knew that sales and business was naturally where life was taking me. I was gravitating towards that.
Yeah.
I had an uncle that unfortunately passed away last June who was who I was extremely close with, and I worshiped the ground he walked on. He was a tax attorney, and I used to go to his office when I was a kid, and I would listen to him in there negotiating and putting together deals and talking his clients off a ledge. And I said, man, I'm going to be like that one day.
So you think you got your business from?
I do. Well, I think a lot of things are genetic. I mean, don't get me wrong. I definitely think that it's been in my genes for years. I mean, I've got lawyers in my family. I've got judges in my family. My great grandfather was a judge, and I have some other relatives in Somerset, Kentucky that were in that as well. So naturally, law and business were kind of in my blood. But I think watching my uncle, it's like when you hear Dwayne Johnson, he loves to clang and bang, to weightlift. He says that he remembers being a kid and going to the gym with his dad, and like how powerful that resonated with him. Like he associates positivity with the gym. So I associate negotiating in business. I associate positivity with that because of my uncle and listening to him as a kid. It's the same sort of neuro association that we have. So to me, business is a very positive thing if it doesn't define who you are. Unfortunately, a lot of people get to really high places in business and it defines who they are. They don't really have an identity outside of it. And when they lose that, they're depressed. Even when they don't lose it, when they realize, hey, I'm not happy and this is what I thought would make me happy and it's not, they discover that there's more to life than just that. And that's been part of my journey as well. But definitely being around him and seeing, when we go out in Louisville, everybody knew who he was and just that admiration that people had for him and the respect that they had for him.
Yeah, you wanted that.
I wanted that. It really resonated with me. And just the way that he treated people and his kindness, I wanted to be that type of business person.
That seems like a good example.
Yeah, he was an amazing example. Absolutely incredible. And he mentored me all through my career till he passed in June. So he was there.
I was going to ask you, like, if you got any business advice from him.
Oh, all the time. He was always the guy that I called. It was like Michael Jordan and his dad. It was like, so it's definitely been difficult for me the last 6 months not having him. There's a lot of situations that I would have called on him for, but yeah, he's always the voice that I hear in my head when I make big business decisions and moves. I definitely hear my uncle in my head.
Oh, so when you hear him in your head, do you feel like you readjust yourself a little bit?
I do. It's kind of like
on the fly.
Right, like what would Jesus do sort of thing. It's like what would Uncle Bruce do in a lot of these situations? Jesus is a good mentor too, right? But, I try to think about how he would handle it. And I do make adjustments a lot of times. My uncle, he could handle confrontation, but he was of the mindset that, don't create a confrontational situation. A lot of times taking the high road is always going to be the right road. And a lot of this stuff is a waste of time. If it's going to waste your time and you're doing it just for personal egotistical reasons, you don't need to teach anybody a lesson. You just need to get out of a toxic situation and move on.
Yeah.
But you shouldn't be looking to teach somebody a lesson. Life is going to do that. You don't need to do that on your own.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's an interesting thought.
Yeah, that's how he handled his divorce, at least. He said, I gave her everything. I just wanted out of it, and it was the right thing to do. And, I didn't worry too much about it. Yeah. I made up for it over time. I didn't want all the drama. Staying away from the toxicity and the drama is huge.
Yeah, that's very huge, especially for business, right?
Right.
Because
Yeah,
you
it's
got like
tough.
clients that might be upset with you and all that stuff. You
It's
have
tough.
to handle it correctly. You got to pull in the reins, right? And all that
You
stuff.
do, and you have to have strategies for handling that. For me, fitness has always been huge. I really try to control my mind as much as I can, and getting away from the cell phone is huge. And a lot of people can't do that, or they won't do that. That's a discipline thing. It's a learned behavior. But at night, you need to start to veer off of that thing, around 7:30, 8 o'clock if possible.
Sure,
I mean, there's really nothing you can solve after that. There's no reason to not just do it the next morning. And I've learned that I sleep better and my stress level has come down. Actually, from my blood work, like we follow my stress with that. We follow my cortisol level. So we've noticed that my cortisol level has gone down as I've made some of these adjustments. And you have to, or else you will get quote unquote burnout. And that's what you see a whole lot of big producers do.
Well, when you first start off in like a business, right, especially entrepreneurs, they tend to get burnt out a lot.
Right.
So is that something that happened to you as well?
Oh, absolutely. In the beginning, it's just such a grind, and you're dealing with so many difficult, dramatic situations at one time.
Yeah.
It's not always that you're dealing with one or two things. It's that you're dealing with a whole lot of things that hit at the same time. So as they say, things come in threes, right? So when you're dealing with like 3 bad situations as opposed to 1, it's a much different scenario. And it's all about how big the problems are and the order that they fall. So yeah, I mean, I think anyone who's done anything at a high level, including parenting, if enough bad stuff happens all at once, it's very easy to get burnout and to start to talk yourself out of things. And you really can't function and make rational decisions when you get in that place.
Yeah.
So you need to have activities, whether it's reading or working out or walking or whatever it is, playing with your dog, playing with your kids, that kind of get you away from the speed at which business is. It's too fast.
It's got to be something completely different from business.
Right. You got to know how to detach.
Yeah.
And if you don't know how to detach, you are gonna run into trouble. And even if you don't ever break down or run it, you're not gonna live a very balanced, enjoyable, fun life.
Right.
You're not.
Yeah. If you only focus on business, you're gonna be a lonely person.
Yeah. And if you're not lonely, you're very boring. You're very boring. I know some boring people in business, for sure.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So when you first decided to go into real estate, what was the first step for you? Real estate school or?
Right. So when I got out of UNC Charlotte, I knew that immediately I need to get a license, because if you're going to earn a commission in the state of North Carolina, or any state, I think, in the United States, you've got to have that. So I immediately went in, started that in Charlotte, and then I ended up wrapping up and finishing that here in the Raleigh area.
So how was that for you? How was the process for you?
Yeah,
was it nerve-wracking in the beginning?
It was, because I was so burnt out on school, man. I was so tired of being in the classroom. So going through JY Monk and all that, man, I was so over it. I feel like I couldn't take one more test. But I knew I needed to come back to Raleigh because my network was here. So I had gone to graduate school in UNC Charlotte and gotten my MBA there. But I knew that ultimately, if I'm starting a career and going from ground zero, that I need to go back to the area where I know the most amount of people, and that was going to be Raleigh-Durham.
Makes sense.
Yeah, so I came back. I had a friend in the car industry. We're still friends, and he owned a townhome in Woodcroft, which is a community.
Wait, hold on. Before we get into that, let's go a little bit back. So you're going through your to get your certification license.
Yeah,
license.
So
how long was that process for you?
The license, it takes about 3 months. 3 months to get through it depends on the course that you sign up for. Some are a little bit deeper dive than others, and it's faster. Mine was about 3 months. I had the license.
Did you find it difficult to do?
I did because I was so burnt out on school, and just it's memorization. And I have a good memory, but not a great memory, and I'm not a good test taker. So never have been. So I actually have a learning disability. So I've always struggled with tests. I'm great at speaking, at papers, at performing, but when it comes to test and memorization, I'm not your guy.
Yeah, me neither.
Yeah, so I struggled with that. I struggled with that. And I struggled with that all through school, to be honest with you. I always had to get help. I always had to work harder. I learned how to study. I recognized early that working first thing in the morning and memorizing things first thing in the morning was a lot more effective than studying later in the day. My mind was sharper and I could retain things better. And saying it out loud and hearing myself say it was also more effective for me, and following with my finger. I learned a lot of strategies and how my brain works.
Yeah.
And everybody learns differently. And I just learned what worked for me. And flashcards were huge. And I just did whatever was necessary. You know, we didn't have a tutor system, which is interesting, in the MBA department at UNC Charlotte. So I literally went and found people. Like I found like the teacher assistants and things like that and just paid them under the table. And granted, I had no money at that time. So I was waiting tables on the side and working. I actually started working at UPS in the finance department. I had an internship. They paid me $19.90 an hour.
There you go.
And then I waited tables on the weekend. So I was hustling. And and I would pay tutors and stuff like that under the table just because I needed extra help in classes like accounting and economics that I just wasn't a natural at. But I ended up getting A's in the classes just because I worked so hard.
Damn. Okay.
Yeah.
It was getting your license. Like, if you fail the test, does that mean you just have to retake the whole class?
Yeah, you got to. If you fail it twice, you have to retake the class.
So you have a second chance to take it.
You have a second chance, and they may have changed this, but this is way back when The Wizard of Oz was playing in movie theaters when I was taking it, right? Back in 2007. But right before the crash.
Gotcha.
But yeah, you had to take it. You had the opportunity to take it a second time, and then if you failed it, then you had to retake the class. You took it a third time. So
gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, it was
okay. So you got your license, and then boom, what'd you do? Celebrate? What was the first
I
thing you
didn't
did?
really celebrate a whole lot. I needed to make money. I was too broke to celebrate. So I was still waiting tables actually at the time. I was not at UPS anymore because school ended and it was just a graduate assistantship sort of thing, internship. And it was high paid, so I took it. It was a great opportunity. I knew somebody at UPS more or less in downtown Charlotte. Excuse me, uptown Charlotte. Right, let's not mess that up.
Get it right, all right?
Right. My sincerest apologies. But no, I went into new construction, and my plan was I'll work for Syntex, which has now been bought by Pulte, but they still use Syntex in certain markets for their marketing, brand recognition. But so I went to Syntex and was like, I'm going to do this for 2 years. I'm going to learn the vocabulary. I'm going to kind of learn new construction and what that's all about. And then I'm going to get into general brokerage, which is what I do now, which is essentially you can sell anything in your MLS, right? That's a typical realtor is a general broker. Okay. If you work for a builder, you can sell their product, but you typically, depending on the builder, can't sell outside of your community. That's normally how that works. So I was like, okay, I'll go work for Syntex. I'll do new construction for 1 to 2 years, and then I'll go into general brokerage.
Is that like a paid thing? Like
yeah, they pay you. They pay you, and at a certain point, I was going to earn commissions after about 6 months. So in the beginning, the first 6 months, they pay you like it's nothing. It's like $1,500 a month back then, which is now probably with this inflation, it's probably $3,000 or something crazy. But back then, it was $1,500, and then I just waited tables on the side. Like I would literally go to the community. I would work there all day. From their hours are weird, like 11 to 6. You went on late because most people don't look at houses at 9 a.m. Right. So I was there from like 11 to 6, and I would get in my car. I would go straight to Texas Steakhouse over by the airport, and I would get on the floor at 6:30, and I would work till like 10:30.
Damn.
And then I would do the same thing the next day, and then I would work on the weekends. So that's what I was doing at the time. Yeah. And so about 6 months later, so that was June of 2007, we got into the end of the year, I guess around it was more like October, end of October. The market was slowing down. So we were going into the Great Recession, and they were starting to lay people off in some of these neighborhoods. So if you were in a neighborhood where you shared it with someone, like I did because I was learning, they got rid of you because they only needed one person in that neighborhood, and they weren't going to pay someone that ultimately didn't really change things for their bottom line. So they started to lay off, and they actually didn't lay me off. They laid off someone else that came on with me. He had a kid. I felt bad. So I said, hey, listen, you stay, I'll go. Because I was planning on getting into general brokerage anyway. And at the time, I was like 25, 26. I'm still waiting tables on the side. Yeah. I could take risk. I'd saved a bunch of money because I'd been hustling for a while then, and I'd saved what I made at UPS. Right. So at that point, I think I'd saved like 30 grand or something, which back then, as a 25-year-old, was a lot of money.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, 25.
Especially with no, nothing hanging over your head in terms of payments. I didn't have a car payment. It was a beater or whatever. Right. So yeah, I could take some risk at the time, and I just kind of got into that mentality of taking risk and going after what I really want, as opposed to getting that immediate gratification once again and going for the short-term fix and getting to a job that maybe pays me 60 or 65,000, but then I'm not on the road of where I want to go. So I think
saving that money for you,
right,
kind of made that easier to to take those risks.
I've always said you've got to have savings, man, because it gives you options. It does. It creates flexibility. It creates a sense of confidence. And that's why you always have to have a big old stack of cash, man, because you never know what's going to happen. You never know when the market's going to turn. You see it happening right now.
Yeah.
You know, people's, you know, production is down at least 25%. You know, if they say something else, they're lying. So, you know, if you're going to take a reduction like that, you've got to have something saved, or at least have some kind of passive income, which fortunately I've created over time. So, you know, you've got to plan for those sorts of things.
Absolutely.
Hope for the best, plan for the worst.
Yeah, exactly. So 2008.
Yeah, 2008 was insane. So I went under contract for my first house at the end of 2007. Like, I think it was the beginning of December 2007, and I was going to close the very beginning of January. So I did that. Bought my first townhome in Nightdale, and then literally watched my 124,100. I remember the sales price. Big deal to me. For that kind of stuff, I have a photographic memory. So 124,100. I watched that drop to $75,000 by July. Damn. So that was my first experience in investing. So whenever a first timer comes to me and they ask for my advice on how to invest, I'm like, dude, this was my first experience. I lost 50 grand in 6 or 7 months. So, you know, clearly I'm not the guy. I've learned over time, you know, you make money when you buy, not when you sell. And clearly I bought at the very top of the market. Couldn't have been a worse time. But again,
did you have any like mentorship when you were doing that?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. So my broker in charge, when I switched over, I went to a smaller firm, Pinnacle Realty. And the guy that owned that at the time, Alan White, he's still in the industry. He's a good guy. He was a good mentor for me. You know, his style was a little bit different than mine, but I learned a lot from him. And he was an investor. And again, I saw in him some things that I wanted to kind of, you know, acclimate into how I do things. And I learned a lot from him. You don't have to be totally just like someone to learn certain things from them, right? So it's like they say in AA, is like, take what you like and leave the rest, right? It's one of those things. So I learned a lot from him during that time. And again, we watched the 124 drop to 75, but keep in mind that 75 is now worth like 275. So if you ride the market long enough, it will come back. You just have to be patient, and you have to have staying power, and that involves having cash. You have to have liquidity. A lot of people know that they shouldn't sell, but they have to because they don't have enough cash to carry them through the rough times. And we're going through one of those patches right now.
Yeah, that's true. Is that one of those, so you bought the townhouse, was that for you or as an investment?
It was a primary residence. So I had been renting that room for my friend in the car industry. And it was like $350 a month. He really cut me a solid.
That's nice.
Dude, it's insane. A cheap car payment. So then I moved from there directly into that townhouse.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, and my girlfriend at the time, she actually lived with me for about 6 months. And then that ended up imploding. And I had sold her, at a certain point, I actually sold her a house. And but yeah, that didn't work. But that was how I got my first house, which later turned into a rental when I moved out of there 2.5 years later. I moved to Briar Creek, which is where I still live actually in a different house. But I moved to Briar Creek and I converted that into a rental. And that tenant is actually still in that house.
There you go.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, you live in Briar Creek. You've been living in Briar Creek since then?
I've been in Briar Creek for 14 years now. Yeah, it'll be 14 years in May.
Oh, so you've seen a lot of changes.
I've seen an unbelievable amount of changes in all of our markets, including Benson and Smithfield. Everything has changed. Everything.
It's getting insane, man.
It is. It is.
Not just for the real estate, but just like
industry.
The industry in general. Like, you know, Dreamville Fest, right? Downtown Raleigh. People were getting hotels in Sanford, out in bumfuck. You know what I mean?
Well, the land is a lot more affordable, which means they can buy stuff more affordably. So it all translates, right? It starts with the supplier and kind of leads on down. So, yeah, I mean, people are going wherever they can find affordability, and they're becoming a lot more accustomed to driving a little bit further. I mean, this is common up north, right? Those folks come down here, they're used to driving an hour there and an hour back. The 2 hours a day commute is kind of a normal thing. That was never normality till COVID hit. And, you know, we had an incredible escalation in prices, and now people are having to compromise and wrap their mind around, hey, I may have to live 40 minutes away from my job. You know, that's kind of a normal thing now.
Well, it's becoming a metropolis, right?
Right. That's right. So it's growing. It's unbelievable, the rate of growth that we've had everywhere. Durham, Wake, Johnston County is amazing. They've actually had the most amount of growth of all these counties. Yeah, in terms of, you got to look at where they started. So we're looking at percentages, right? So they're going from nothing to a pretty good amount of people now, whereas Wake and Durham County were always fairly large. And yes, they've absolutely grown stupendously, but not at the percentage rate of increase that Johnston has.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So let's go back a little bit. So then you got your first townhouse. You were still working for a specific company at that time?
So when I got my first townhouse, I was actually still waiting tables. I got out of that. I closed on the townhouse in January, and I waited tables till April. So what I was doing was, everybody that would come into the restaurant, I would wait their table, do it. I was a money server, man. I'm going to tell you, I loved waiting tables, dude. And they put me in the smoking section, which, you know, back in those days, you could smoke in a restaurant, which is unheard of now, right? You don't even see people smoking cigarettes anymore, let alone in a restaurant. So, you know, it was an 8-table section, which anybody who's waited tables knows, typically you're going to get like 2 to 3 tables, right? Sure. So they let me have all of smoking, and I would wait and it would fill up because you know, we're in North Carolina, tobacco is big. People smoke in the state, man.
There you go.
So I'd have all of smoking rolling at one time. Now I would get some help, and I was sweating, man. I mean, it was cardio for sure. But you know, at the end of every table, I would give everybody a card, say, hey, I'm getting into real estate. If you guys, you know anybody that's looking, or if you're moving to the area, because you know we live in a huge relocation area, and it was right by the airport, so it was beautiful. And I actually got some of my first deals in my career from that strategy of just giving out a card, introducing myself, connecting with people. You already have a little bit of rapport when you wait their table.
Yeah, of course.
So you give them a card afterwards, and it's like, yeah, this is a guy I'm going to hire. I already liked him. I saw how hard he worked. Exactly. So it translated really well. And the restaurant had a little bit of a problem with that later on, though, because that was at a certain point an issue.
How long did you get away with it?
I got away with it for months, and they all knew I was giving cards to everybody, man. I mean, they tell you, like, you can't be a secret agent. You got to make sure that people know that you're in real estate, or else, you know, having a license doesn't do you any good.
So somebody left like a card on the table. And
I mean, bro, I was doing everything outside of flying a banner on an airplane in the sky. But, you know, I would give everybody a card. But one day, one of them who actually ended up working with me, came in, and this was back before this was back in the glorious days where we didn't have a lot electronic signatures. So everything was manual, you handwritten. So the manager saw me sitting over at my table with the person that was eating, that was actually my client at this time, and we were drawing up an offer on a house. So they pulled me to the back. They're like, Adam, you can't sell houses while you're on shift, man. You can't do that. So they say, we want you to leave for the day, and if you want to come back tomorrow and apologize, we'll probably let you come back. And that was literally how they put it. So I checked out for the night, cashed out, went home.
Yeah.
I think maybe got back with her, and we finished the offer, and I submitted that, faxed it back in those days. And I decided, I was like, you know, that's the way I want to go out. Like, if I'm going to retire from waiting tables, which I've been doing it for 4 years at that time, I want it to be like this. I want it to be through real estate, because in my mind, I wanted to become a multimillionaire in real estate. I wanted that to be the vehicle that brought me wealth. And that was always kind of my vision on how, because I was so passionate about it and loved it and still do. And I knew that was the way to go out. And I knew that I needed to put all my eggs in that basket. It's kind of like Sly Stallone said when he went into acting, it was the same thing. He was like, you know, I didn't want any of those side hustles. He's like, if I was going to fail, I was going to fail with acting. I was going to put everything I had into it. And that was how I viewed real estate. I was like, dude, I'll knock on any door. I'll give out cards wherever. I'll do whatever it takes. But I'm going to go all in, and I'm not going to have a little side hustle anymore. And this is the way to go out. I felt like the universe was talking to me. Yeah. And that was the last table I ever waited. Yeah. That was it.
I love stories like that, because like, you know, you have this passion, right? But you still have this thing to pay the bills. But then this starts growing. And then like there comes a point, there's the tipping point, right? Where you have to kind of decide. And then it usually ends up being that you get fired or let go or something.
And life pulls you in certain directions, right? I always try to, I'm always very in tune with where life is taking me. Like it will guide you in certain directions, and a lot of people won't listen a lot of times, right? Yeah. But when you see yourself going in that direction and it's working out and things are falling into place, that's probably the direction that you need to go to. Yeah. And if it's positive, right? And I just saw so many positive things happening in real estate, and our market was just naturally growing as I was coming into the industry. So my timing, you know, people can downgrade 2008 and say, oh my God, you came in during the Great Recession. And man, there was, 21,000 active listings on MLS, which is a huge number. It's way less than that right now, and our area is way bigger, which makes no sense. But it was an incredible opportunity, because whenever there's not a whole lot of demand like that, people are going to get out of the industry. So I got into the industry when it was very difficult to put a house under contract. And you had a ton of realtors, and you saw what was happening now as well. People started getting out of the industry because there wasn't any money to be made. Right. So the only people that were going to make money were the ones that were willing to give a card to every table they were waiting. Yeah. And I was at that point, I'd started going to the apartments and knocking on doors. And I would find the apartment complexes that were paying, $800 and up, because back in those days you could get a mortgage for that. I know that sounds crazy,
right? Yeah, I remember.
But you could buy $120,000 house, normal. I mean, that was just a normal thing. back in 2008 through 2013. You could get a ranch in Knightdale for that. So I would go to the apartments in that area. They're already living in that area and knock on the doors and say, hey, listen, I know you're paying, $900 a month. I can get you a 3-bedroom house, literally 2 miles from here. Your mortgage is going to be about $850. And oh, by the way, and this is during the tax credit, I said, you'll get $8,000 that you will not have to pay back if you live in that house for at least 3 years as your primary.
Right.
And I would give my card and say, hey man, if you're interested, let me know. And I would just go to the next door and just repeat. And
it sounds like a good deal, bro.
It worked out well because think about it. All I needed was a stack of business cards and time. That's all that you ever need in the beginning.
Yeah.
And people lose that. They're like, oh, I'm going to get on social media and I'm going to drive my business on there. And listen, yeah, there's great opportunities in digital marketing, no question. But to me, you need to hone your craft on the phone and in front of people. That to me is an experience every salesperson should have.
Yeah.
You need to learn how to communicate face to face. I know people in my industry that do well, and they're really big on the telegenic stuff through the internet. Their commercials on the internet. But when you get face to face with them, I find that they really don't have great people skills. Like they never developed that.
Right.
So you need to start there, and then you can supplement what you're already doing with the social media and other modalities of marketing. But you need to start with the basic skills. This thing called communicating, and it's just a lost art. Like you don't see people that can talk anymore, and we're in sales. Like, how are you in sales and you can't talk?
That's true. I had to learn how to communicate. Like when I was 24, I changed my whole life, right? And so one of the first things that I had to do is learn how to communicate.
Right.
I was completely isolated, man. Just work home, and I didn't want to hang out with anybody. So like when I had changed my life, I had to make those steps, like learning the art of pickup.
Yeah.
The law of attraction, just basic communication strategies in order to do it.
You attract what you are.
Yeah.
You are. So if you don't like your situation, you really need to look at who you are. And that's a tough lesson. And I've had to do that. I mean, it's been one of the hardest things, man, is separating yourself from people that aren't growing you anymore. And, they don't even necessarily have to be toxic, but they're just not good for you. And you have to get away from those people. And that to me has been the hardest thing.
Or even just like they're good people maybe, but like you've outgrown them already.
Right.
It's like, what do you do?
Right. Yeah, you've raised your standard and they haven't.
Right.
And a lot of times they'll tell you that you've changed, and that's a compliment. Of course you've changed.
Yeah.
That would be an insult to say that you haven't changed. Like, why have we been working on ourselves and doing all these things to have not changed?
Right.
So change is what we're looking for. That is the goal, is change, to grow in a positive direction.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
So you went into 2008 during the recession, you stuck it out.
Right.
And then you ended up kind of like it's almost like a stock market, right? You kind of wrote it out, and then
you do. Yeah, exactly. You got to have staying power, as I say. Yeah. And I had saved a bunch of money going into 2008. I had no idea that I was going to have the greatest. It was lucky. It was absolutely lucky. And listen,
but hard work.
Right. I was ready. I would not have been able to capitalize on the opportunity that was in front of me in 2008 had I not already saved $30,000.
Yeah.
Had I not already had a hustle waiting tables on the side and worked all the multiple jobs that I had at that time, gotten the education in business and read the books that I'd read that all told me that, hey, you need to buy real estate, you need to buy rental properties. I'd met people that had done that I looked up to, and I wanted to emulate that. So I had done all the appropriate steps to put me in an opportune position when that opportunity presented itself. When it did, I was ready to strike, and I wasn't going to hold back. And I wasn't going to talk about it. I've met a lot of people over the years that, Adam, I want to pick your brain. And that's great. I always want to help people. But you got to help yourself. You got to get up off your ass and you got to take a risk. You got to put yourself out there, man. And you may not get the answer that you're looking for right away. But if you keep doing that, you're going to get on the right track sooner or later.
Yeah.
And you will find your way. It may not be in the 2008 recession. It may be during the opportunities that arose in COVID. It may be somewhere in the middle there. But you will get that chance, but you got to be playing the game, man. You got to take shots. And people get out there and they don't want to shoot the damn ball. You got to shoot. Yeah. You got to swing. Yeah. And if you're not going to do that, man, you're not ever going to hit a ball.
Even if you miss,
You're going to miss, you're going to miss, you're going to miss, and then you're going to hit it. The greatest major league sluggers of all time, are 30%. They're hitting 30% of the time.
Right.
They're missing 70% of the time. The greatest hitters of all time, Babe Ruth, all of them, they're missing 70% of the time. So you've got to swing. You got to swing for the fence.
Yeah, it's like you in your cards, right?
Yeah.
You haven't had any cards you've handed out and just got a handful, you know what I mean? But those are enough to have like something under your belt.
I've been told no 99.9% of the time. It's a very small percentage that needs to say yes. And there's always going to be quite a bit of people that just don't like you. They're not going to like the way you look. They're not going to like the way you walk. They may not like the way you talk. They're just not going to like you for whatever reason. And you can't focus on that. You got to focus on the people that you do connect with. Because we all know that feeling of when you meet someone and it's like your fast friends, you just hit the ground running together. And that can change. That person 10 years later, you may not connect anymore. I've seen that too. Right. But you got to look for the people that you do connect with, and you need to focus on that, because you only need yes a small percentage of the time. A majority of it is going to be no. And if you go in with that mindset, you're going to have the right expectation. But most people are going in, I'm going to hear yes 99% of the time and no 1% of the time. And that's totally the wrong expectation. Go in expecting no. Sooner or later, that no, it just means not right now. That will turn into a yes if you are persistent. There's a lot of people that have hired another realtor that I've worked with the next time or the time after that. If you're in this long enough and you're persistent long enough, you're going to get it sooner or later.
So when people say you hear no a lot, when do you change your tactic? Was it after a few no's or after your first no?
It's constant. I'm always doing it. Even recently, I've been told no a couple of times in a row and hey, what am I doing wrong? So you're constantly, it's one of the things I love about real estate and business is it grows you. You have to adapt, you have to adjust, you have to get uncomfortable. And, in the last year and a half, you've noticed that a lot of agents that were killing it, me included, have to get uncomfortable in a way that we haven't in a long time. We have to do things we haven't done in a while. You have to ask for business. 2019, even before COVID, through 22, I would say, was it June of 22? We had some outrageous inflation. Inflation got up to 9.1%.
Right. Yeah.
That was when the Fed really started, raising the rates. So, we were selling and it was easy. You didn't have to ask for a sale. It came to you. And, everybody got into real estate. I mean, you've got 1 billion agents now and mortgage brokers. That's gotten a lot less. You're seeing those people get out now because you're not getting business thrown at you the way that you did before. You have to work for it. Yeah. So to those of us that are used to that, we don't have as much of a problem going back to that type of mindset. But if you have a difficult time wrapping your mind around that mentality, then it's going to be very difficult.
Yeah.
And you're probably not going to last.
Yeah. Yeah. You not only have to be a salesperson, but you have to be like a realtor and
you do.
All that stuff.
You got to wear a lot of hats, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. You got to sing, dance, and act. You do.
It's like, whoop, whoop,
you got to do it all, man.
All that.
You got to do it all. Right.
All right. So you bought your first townhouse. You did your thing. What was the next step after the townhouse, after that happened?
Yeah. So for the first, I would say the first 2 to 3 years, I was really a door knocker, man. I mean, it was always face to face. You got to remember, social media was not that big at this time.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So we're talking 2010, 2011. I got on Facebook, just so you have an idea, in 2010. I wasn't even on social media the first 2 years of my career. There was not one video, not one picture of me at a closing, nothing. And in all honesty, the videos didn't start till about 2016 or 17. Right. I mean, this is years later I started with content. So in the beginning, I would just take a picture at every closing. And, you got your buyer holding their keys up, they're smiling, they're happy. Yeah. And then I would post that picture and then write a little story of what happened. Right. And it started there. And people started to see, hey, he's selling quite a bit of houses in a market that's really slow. And then I was investing and I would say, hey, I just bought my second house, I just bought my third house. And that number continued to grow. And so people were seeing that, hey, he also buys a lot of real estate. He's an investor. So I would pick up people that were also looking to invest. That was another way that I started to pick up business. And there were clients that would bring in, anywhere from 5 to 10 deals in 1 year with the same client.
Nice.
Just because they wanted to invest and knew that I was an investor. And let's just face it, 99% of real estate agents are not investors. So if you're looking to invest, you need to hire someone that already does that. Yeah. You don't need to hire someone who just wants to broker a deal. There's nothing wrong with brokering a deal. I love brokering deals, but that's a completely different type of agent than what you're looking for. So I think consumers need to be aware of that.
Interesting.
Pick the right agent, because not all agents do it the same way. It's like basketball players. You got some players that rebound a whole lot. You got some that can dribble the ball and pass. You got some that score. Like, what are you looking for? If you're looking to score, you need to be around a scorer. That needs to be your mentor. So I think that picking an agent is incredibly important. It's very, very critical that you go with the right person, that your goals align. They have to be on the same page.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit more about the investors that come to you.
Right.
Like, so they have a couple houses that they're interested in, and you
typically it's people that want, and it's a lot less right now because we're not really in an investor market because of the rates. So you really got to play to your market as well. Different markets offer different opportunities. I mean, clearly right now it's still a great time to sell because there's very limited inventory. Now you have less demand, but you have a lot less competition because there's very few homes on the market. We have less than a 2-month supply. We need 6 months to have equilibrium. So we're nowhere near that right now. So it very much is a seller's market, and there is some gray area. Okay, so if you're in certain cities, we're not going to name any that are on the outskirts that maybe don't have a great reputation. It's a little bit harder to move homes there, and it may take 60 to 120 days to get it sold. And I don't care who it is trying to sell the house; it's going to take a while.
Right.
Is
that hard for real estate agents?
Oh yeah, I mean, you never want to disappoint people.
Yeah,
you never want to disappoint people, but so much of it is setting the proper expectation up front. You have to have the uncomfortable conversations in the very beginning, so you can have some more uncomfortable conversations as you go, and they're a little bit easier than that initial one. But if you don't set the stage for what this road is going to look like, then you're setting yourself up for defeat. So you have to be very transparent and very candid with people in the beginning, and be willing to have uncomfortable conversations.
I think that's a good thing, though. I mean, it shows that you care.
Right.
So like to them, like I would want that from my agent. You know what I mean?
Right.
It just makes sense.
There are some people that just want you to tell them what they want to hear. There are definitely clients like that, but that's not clients that you want to work with. So they're doing you a favor when they say no.
Yeah. How do you catch that?
Vibe. After doing it for as many years as I have, I'm a psychology guy. So I've always been into human behavior. That's why I love economics, because it's psychology. It really is the way people get out of the market. You look at like how people speculate. It's very interesting, and it's all psychology. Yeah. I watch people's body language. I watch the way what they're saying, how they're communicating with me, the story that they're telling me, and I base it on that. I can normally tell you walking out of a listing appointment whether or not we connected or not.
So what do you do at that point? Do you just like let them know right away, or? Hey,
well, a lot of times I'm interviewing, so they may let me know. They may let me know whether or not they feel like I'm a good fit. So I don't get every single listing that I go after. And anyone that tells you that is lying.
So the first
step, you hit every shot you take.
Yeah. So the first step is the interview process. You interview, to make sure you guys vibe.
Right. Gotcha. So I get a lot of repeat business. So for those, I'm not really interviewing. It's more, hey, my friend wants to sell their house. They're probably not going to talk to anybody else. Sometimes because so many people have gotten into agency, they have a friend that's a realtor, or their husband or wife. A lot of times I've lost some deals because of that, has become a realtor. But normally if somebody's calling me off a referral, or it's someone that I've already worked with, I'm getting the deal. Yeah. But there are some where I do have to interview, and it's not guaranteed that you're going to get it. It's like a job interview. It's no different. Yeah. You're going in, you're showcasing your skills, you're trying to win them over, you're trying to connect. But what I found is there's nothing wrong with saying no to business either. Like as you go through this thing, and money has a lot to do with it. Once you acquire some passive income and you're doing pretty well for yourself, you don't have to say yes to every deal. Yeah. Any more than an actor has to say yes to every script that's put in front of them. They look at different scripts. They say, yeah, I want to do this role. Hey, this one's not good for me. It doesn't fit. Right. I've gotten to a point now where a lot of times it's just not a good fit, and there's deals that I don't want to be a part of. It's too much risk for one. If someone's got some, squirrely behavior, you don't want to be representing them in a real estate transaction. So, you have more to lose the deeper you go into this thing. So you're a little bit more critical about who you're working with.
Gotcha. Yeah. And you're dealing with money, right? So you don't want to mess that up or anything.
The largest investment typically that people are ever going to make in their life.
Right.
And we're in the middle of that. So you want to be very careful as to who you're working with.
Yeah. So you first got into selling houses, right?
Yeah.
And then you went into investing afterwards?
Yeah. So the investing started. So I sold houses from June to that first December in 2007, went under contract for my first house, which is a primary residence. So that wasn't a rental. It was converted into a rental when I moved out of it. Yeah. 2.5 years later. But it was not a rental in the beginning. So I moved into that, lived there. I paid it down. I wanted to pay it off. Was my initial goal. And I got it down to so the 124, I got it down to $50,000. Okay. Excuse me. And then I went into my next house, which is in Briar Creek, which I still own. And lived there for 12 years. But in between that 12-year span, I bought a lot of other rental properties. So I acquired properties as I went and just kind of built my portfolio over time. And I got properties all over the place. I've got stuff in Durham. I've got stuff in Knightdale, Kenley, Garner, Clayton, and a lot in Raleigh. So I just bought the whole market for the most part. There's areas that I would like to go back and buy that I didn't. Never bought Cary. I never bought Apex. I never bought Chapel Hill. I don't know if I'd redo that, but I would definitely buy Cary, Apex, and Holly Springs. I didn't get in on those. And, obviously areas like North Hills, in the Village District, I wish I would have picked up some stuff there, but it is what it is. I'm happy with what I did. And, I took the level of risk that I was comfortable with at that time. And I think being aware of your aversion to risk and what you can take and be healthy is important as well. Because some people take on way too much risk and they're not made for it. Yeah. And then they're absolutely stressed out and it's not worth it.
Right. So when you started buying rental properties, is it like, what do you recommend somebody, I guess nowadays, because like if you wanted to buy a rental property, is it like I always heard that it was better to buy multifamily homes, like an apartment complex or duplex, whatever it is. Then
this is Grant Cardone talking. I know that he preaches about the apartment complexes. He does. And listen, for a lot of people, that strategy works. It really. Here's the thing that I always tell people: you can get wealthy doing anything. There's plenty of people that have gotten wealthy selling Mary Kay cosmetics. Sure. There's plenty of people that have gotten wealthy opening car washes. There's people that have gotten wealthy as franchisees of Bojangles. There's people that have gotten wealthy buying single family homes, buying condos, buying apartment complexes. What do you feel comfortable with? There's no right or wrong answer. And I think that people spin their wheels trying to analyze this stuff way too much. Just get started. I already told you. Listen, man, I spent $124,000 and lost 50 grand within 7 months of doing it. But that's now double what it was worth when I bought it or more. Yeah. So, you just got to get started, man. You got to get your feet wet. You got to get out there and don't overanalyze what it is that you're buying. Just buy something. Right. And don't be stupid about it. I mean, do some due diligence.
Yeah, of course.
Be aware of what you're buying, but don't overanalyze it. And man, as soon as they start off with, I want to pick your brain, it's that they've been picking their nose for too long, right? It's like you've got to get started. Yeah. Buy something, do something.
Interesting. Okay. What do you think about investing with businesses, like business buildings and stuff like that?
Once again, if you have an education and you have the contacts, to get into the commercial side of things, to get in commercial real estate. There are pleny of people that have cleaned up in that space.
Is that something you're interested in?
It's not something that I'm interested in because residential is what I love. Okay. And I actually love the stock market too. So and a lot of residential is in the stock market, and you can get into the commercial side in the stock market too if you're buying REITs, right? So, I've got REITs that focus on hospitals, different sectors of healthcare, buildings, storage facilities. And I can just buy shares of that as opposed to going and getting involved in some grandiose project and having to outlay a lot of capital. I've done that. I've spent a lot of money on acquiring, brick and mortar. I'd rather diversify into something else that's going to pay me dividends. That's, it's a little bit less. I can spend $50 and buy a share of something as opposed to going and spending $50,000 to get into a deal. And at this point, I just don't see the need to take a huge risk.
Yeah, that's true, right? Especially after COVID and stuff like that.
Yeah, and I have a good passive income now that I can live on very comfortably and do whatever I want and travel. But there's always more. Like I like growing a business. I like growing production. I enjoy being in real estate. And until that doesn't fill my cup anymore, I'm going to continue to partake.
Right. Yeah. Do you, so as far as like with your rental properties and stuff like that, what's like the main trouble that you always run into? Or
repairs, man. So repairs, and of course, you're going to have some vacancies too. You're going to have some people that move out in the middle of the night or don't pay you. You're going to have some of those issues, and they're not common. I mean, they're not as common as some of the horror stories that you hear. Yeah. And let's be real, man. I was very fortunate in the beginning. My first tenant was great. My first several tenants were great, and I went a while without having a major repair. So I was very, very fortunate in that way. Some people buy their first rental and it's a disaster, and that changes their whole trajectory of where they go. Yeah. If my first rental would have been awful and it would have been a nightmare experience, I don't know that I'd be sitting here talking about all these rentals that I own. I may have gone a completely different direction. I may have gone and gotten into storage spaces or something like that. Yeah. I know plenty of people that are in real estate that are making money that way too. I've just always been a big power of focus guy, and I find that what I focus on expands, especially when I go at it with the right intentions and the ability and the willingness to work. And when you do that, I find that you're going to expand whatever it is you're focusing on. And residential has always been my vehicle.
Yeah. When you first started to invest, how was that for you? Was it nerve-wracking for you? Was it?
It was.
Because it's a new thing for you, right?
It's always nerve-wracking, but what really helped me was the alternative. I didn't like the alternative of not investing. I looked at people that didn't invest and where it got them, and I decided that, yeah, this is a little bit uncomfortable and scary, but it beats the alternative of not doing this. It's kind of like someone that's in a family that has like really bad diabetes or health problems, and they realize, hey, I've got to lose weight because this runs in my family. And yeah, it sucks losing weight. I'm not going to enjoy this. It's painful, but it beats the alternative of having problems, health problems, right? Yeah. So they're able to wrap their mind around that discomfort. And that's kind of how it was for me, is it beat the alternative of not investing. Yeah, so I always thought about that. I was like, yeah, this sucks, man. This is really stressful. And listen, I've had a lot of stress over the years.
Yeah. I mean, when you're dealing with that amount of money, it's always going to be a little stressful.
Yeah, right? And just business is stressful. I mean, dealing with people and personalities can be very hard. I mean, people don't always have rational thoughts, and they can have very unrealistic expectations. But a majority of people are good. A majority of people are good, and they mean well, and they want what they want sometimes. But learning how to communicate with them is the art of being a good agent.
Yeah. Especially what they want, right? So, talking about that, like the expectations of what people want versus what they can get. Do you find like a lot of people have these dream things that they want, but they just don't have the budget?
Right.
To have
Oh yeah. Especially now, because people are caught in a previous market and they have the expectation of what a previous market would do for them. And they come into this market with that fictitious belief that they can still get that. But what you've got to help people realize is this vision that they have, this idea that they have, is erroneous. Like a lot of times, this is something that you fabricated in your mind that doesn't actually exist in reality. What reality is what the market is doing, right?
Yeah.
So Mr. Market is going to tell us what your home is worth. It's unfortunately not us that gets to decide what our home is worth.
Right.
And conveying that message to people lightly, and I've messed up there, trust me, I have, is again part of being good at this. You have to know how to communicate with people. If you don't know how to communicate with people effectively, you may have some immediate success. You may do well for 1 to 3, 4 years. Sooner or later, it's going to catch you. You're going to get into trouble. You're going to get burnt out. The market's going to change. Your old strategy is no longer going to work. You've got to know how to adjust and adapt. And when Michael Jordan couldn't go to the basket anymore, he started shooting fadeaway jump shots, man. You got to figure out how to adjust to your age, your market, what's happening, and kind of find success again.
Yeah, always be adjusting, right?
Right,
yeah,
constantly
never
adjusting.
Never stop.
And learning. You got to read. You got to know what's going on.
Yeah. Keep yourself
Being
updated.
well read is huge.
Yeah. Is a license something that you have to renew every year, or is it?
You've got to pay every year to renew that, and there's 8 hours of continuing ed that you've got to do each year. So you've got an elective that you've got to take, and then of course the continuing ed section. So you've got to know what you have to be educated on what the market is doing and the changes that are coming down the pike. So
I mean that makes sense, right?
Yeah. I get it.
Yeah. So let's talk about COVID a little bit, because
before
COVID things were on a high, I'm assuming.
Well, things actually went up during COVID. So that was what really spiked the market, because you had up all this pent-up demand of people that couldn't go out and couldn't do anything for several months. So then they all came out in droves when they felt comfortable. And it kind of came in different waves, right? People got comfortable when they got comfortable, but you had all these people that want to buy. And let's not forget that prices were still low back then. So you could get a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,600 square foot house in Durham, literally within 15 minutes of Briar Creek RTP for $3 to $325. And the rate was 2.75 to 3%, 30-year fixed.
Damn.
It was unbelievably inexpensive to carry this mortgage.
Yeah.
And rents were already going up. So the price of owning that house as opposed to renting was about the same.
Right.
That's no longer the case. So COVID, during that time, you had all these people that had been locked away in their house. Homes were cheap, rates were low, and it just created this incredible euphoria that, we saw, with everybody buying. And you saw videos of 25 people waiting to get in a house. That was reality.
So before COVID or when COVID first started happening, did you have that in mind of it's going to go up?
No, nobody expected that to happen. Nobody. And if I could do one thing in terms of my investing over again, I would have gone and bought every stock I could during that time, because there was an incredible dip it was very short, for about 30 to 60 days. We had great opportunity to buy some really inexpensive stuff. So if I would have known, I would have done that. Housing, was less expensive, obviously, than it is now, but it wasn't, in my eyes, a great opportunity because I took advantage of 2008. People need to understand that recessions are always different. And I think people are really caught in this whole mantra that 2008 is going to repeat itself. It absolutely is not.
Yeah.
2008 was caused by a lot of things. There were like 8 things that caused 2008.
Yeah.
One of which we all know is the unscrupulous loans that were made.
Right.
There were a lot of people that could not afford a home that were given a mortgage on a home. And you're talking about people who have zero business acumen that own 3 and 4 houses during that time. People that knew nothing about business were buying rental properties, right? So of course, people lost 2 or 3 homes during that time, not just one. Right. So you had this flood of inventory on the market, zero demand. Nobody wanted to buy because everybody was getting laid off. And it was a really tumultuous time in our economy. So you had all this inventory and you had nobody wanting to buy it. So obviously the prices plummeted.
Right.
This market is nothing like that. Like we have no inventory. Like there's basically no resale homes that people really want right now. And you have demand, but there's a lot of people who aren't buying because the rates are lower. So you have a lot of demand, but you have incredibly low supply. I don't see why people think that there's going to be this fire sale of homes. There's just not. There's not. At the end of the day, people locked into super low interest rates, super affordable payments that they're not going to beat in an apartment complex.
Yeah.
It's not like unemployment is running high. There's not a lot of unemployment. People are very employed right now. So people are making good money. They have inexpensive housing. The economy overall is actually very good, surprisingly. That's another thing that's been shocking is how great the economy is.
Right.
People are not going to lose their homes, not enough to affect the economy.
I feel like the recovery of that is like happened really quickly.
It really did, and that was super surprising as well. And you look at the greatest economists in the world, a vast majority of them called it wrong. They thought that we were going to have, a hard landing, and we have not.
Yeah.
Granted, we might in the next year or two. I mean, you never see a recession coming, right? Unless you're that guy from The Big Short, whatever that guy's name is. He saw it coming, but that was like one guy, and maybe a few others, but everybody else never saw 2008 coming. And it's amazing that they didn't see that coming. That to me seemed obvious looking back. That George W. Bush administration gave everyone the ability to buy a home. It was so easy to get a house.
Yeah.
So I don't think it was a surprise that happened looking back on it.
Right.
And again, there were a myriad of reasons that caused that, right? But I don't see any indication whatsoever that we're heading, and maybe I'm going to hate that I said this, but I just don't see some major influx of inventory on the market. I just don't.
So if there's a shortage of houses now, like, I feel like that makes your job harder, right?
It does. It makes it harder because people don't want to sell. So then where are you going to get your listings? So you've got all these agents that have gotten into the industry, but you have very limited supply of people that want to sell. So everybody's battling over the few people that do want to sell their home. And then of course people want to buy, but a lot of people have been priced out because the rates are higher and the houses have gone up in price. So now you have this inflated price. The home that I mentioned earlier that was $325 is now $450. So that $450 is now at 6.5% as opposed to 3%. This is a lot more unaffordable.
Right.
Yeah, people are paid more nowadays, but not enough to keep up with those two numbers. And that's the problem.
Gotcha. Interesting.
Yeah,
So
it'll level out over time, but this is what markets do.
I heard that right now is kind of where it's leveled out at, right? It's not going to go any higher. It's not going to go any lower. It's just going to kind of ride the wave kind of thing.
I agree with that. I think you're going to see things go sideways. You may see a little bit of a dip in certain areas, and you're going to see an increase in certain areas. But overall, I think going sideways is kind of what we're going to see.
Yeah,
I see that.
That's interesting, man. So what's the next step for you?
Well, as much as I love residential real estate, continue to build out my team. And from that, I don't mean getting a larger team. I have no desire to do that, but just creating more production.
So you have a team with you?
I do.
Okay.
I've got 5 agents that are with me, and then myself, and then we've got a closing coordinator. So there's 7 of us. So, continue to expand what we have in-house. I've got some creative marketing ideas that I don't want to disclose just yet that I'm going to be working on in the coming months and kind of coming at this from a different angle. So I'm excited about that. Investing is something that always interests me, but again, I'm more on the stock market side of things nowadays as opposed to brick and mortar. I love brick and mortar, but I want to focus on kind of growing my business.
It just seems like a pain in the ass.
It's a lot of work. Yeah, that is not inaccurate. But but we've gotten that to a good place now where it's well managed. It's in a good spot. So I'm happy with that. I'm content. I don't need to prove anything with that. I feel like I've reached a good place with that. There's some things in my career that I'd like to do improve, but we'll get there with time. And then of course, speaking and writing and consulting and helping other people have some of the success that I've had is going to be the next step for me. And that's kind of a 3 to 5 year plan. We'll get there, but there's some things that I need to do with my team first.
Yeah, that's great. I think the consulting thing is a big one too.
Yeah, I'm excited to do that. It will fill me up, and there's so many people that kind of need some direction and need mentorship. And
are you talking about like other real estate agents or just people, like normal?
Both. So obviously, realtors, that's kind of an easy grab because a lot of them are already following me, but other industries as well. Just work-life balance, is definitely something that I think I can help people with. Yeah. The ability to manage stress. It is a learned behavior. It is something that I've worked on over the years, and just some of the different things that I've done to do that and achieve that. I think helping others reach that point. There's a lot of very successful people that aren't happy, and I think working with them and helping them reach that place is something that definitely resonates with me.
Yeah, and I think the more you put yourself out there, the more people
that's what it's all about, man. You got to put yourself out there.
Yeah. So the videos you do and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Obviously, you're having fun with it. Right?
Yeah.
So but do you keep in mind your audience?
I do, and I need to adjust that a little bit. So I've done a lot of the comedy driven stuff in the past. Not to say that I won't do that anymore because I'm a funny Jewish guy, man. That's what we do. Hey, man,
put yourself out there.
That's how we ride, baby. But I definitely need to kind of tone that back a little bit, and I've got some another direction I kind of want to go with that, and I look forward to showcasing that in the coming months.
What about
just kind of changing my marketing? And I think there is a happy medium there.
Because one caters to the more younger crowd,
right?
One older crowd, right? So.
Yeah, and that's always been my demographic for sure. But I think kind of diversifying, as we say, is definitely something that I'm looking to do in the next phase of my career.
That's great, man.
Yeah.
What do you think? What about the market? These days, do you find yourself the older crowd dealing with you or the younger crowd?
Middle age. I would say it's more the middle age folks. We get a lot of the younger demographics still because I'm a young 42. What can I say? Hey. But I try to stay young and active. But I find that I am getting some of those 55 and up listings now. Gotcha. In terms of actual 55, Findle Farms and some of those communities. I've done more of that in the last 12 months and more experienced sellers that aren't first time sellers.
Yeah. I'm
getting more of that now. And again, this is kind of looking at the market now is kind of a bad reflection because you have a lot of people that aren't entering the market because they don't want to sell.
Right.
They're locked into 3% interest rates and they have no desire to go lock in at a 6.5% rate. So they're kind of holding tight, waiting for the rates to come down, and they will go down. They will go down. I don't think they're going to go down as much or as fast as people anticipate, but over time they will go down. I mean, I don't think they're going to go higher than 7%. They got as high as like 7.9%, I think 6 months ago or 4 months ago. So I don't see them going back in that direction. Yeah. But if we've learned anything, it's that we know nothing. Socrates was spot on with that, and I think we just need to kind of take it as it comes. My prediction is kind of what you had said earlier, that we're going sideways here, and that rates will go down over time. And then once we get around 5.5%, I think you're going to see a lot more buyers come out, and things are going to be moving more quickly.
I find it like because you got the generations, right? You got boomers and then Gen X and all that stuff. But with the boomers, they're retiring. You find a lot of people retiring, right? Then they want to downsize their house and stuff like that. Do you find a lot of that happening now?
They're the largest demographic, because of the baby boomers and how many of them there are. Yeah. So there's so many of them that own homes that, haven't sold yet. I haven't seen a tremendous amount of activity in that sector yet.
I feel like a lot of people are just passing down the house. Right?
Yeah, well, and I have done quite a few of those in the last year. We did do some estate stuff. So I feel like right now the main people that are selling are divorcees. That's always 50% of the time. You're going to have people getting divorced, so they're going to need to sell. So you're seeing that. You're seeing divorcees. You're seeing relocation, and you're seeing the estate where somebody has acquired a house and somebody passed away and they need to sell it. They have no desire to keep it. They don't want to enter the rental game. Right. And those are the three situations you're really seeing people sell in right now.
Let's talk about that a little bit,
right?
Because when you resell a house after you inherit it, you have to pay the tax on that, right? Of what do you call it? The inflation.
There's a process that they go through with the estate, in the dealing with the legal side of that sort of thing. Normally, when they come to me, they've already handled that. The trustee and all that. So once they've gotten through that process, then we go, and there is additional paperwork that my assistant will oftentimes ask for, just so, we're above board. But typically when they're coming to me, that's all been figured out. Everything has been signed. The attorney has gotten what they need, and we're ready to roll with the home sale. I don't ever start prematurely. I'm always very cautious about, taking it in stride and getting to things when we're ready, because the last thing I want to do is something unscrupulous.
Right. So what about, do you know anything about trust? And
I do not. I lean on the attorney for that. My grandmother actually just passed away, so we're dealing with one right now. But no, it's not an area that I typically go into.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I stay out of that, man. That's above my pay grade, man.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah,
I was curious because with real estate and trust, all that stuff.
Yeah.
But very cool, man. It seems like you're doing some great things.
I appreciate it, man. I'm enjoying it. I'm trying to.
Yeah. Why don't you tell everybody where they can reach you?
Yeah. So I'm Adam Does Deals on Instagram, Facebook. It's Adam Grossman. If you want to contact me via cell phone, 919-451-5717, or adam@grossmanrealestategroup.com. Looking forward to hearing from you.
My man.
Appreciate you, man. I enjoyed it.
Yeah. Thank you, man.
Yeah, you too.